Alright, thanks for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my own little 2-cent review about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It is going to be loaded with spoilers, so if you do not want things ruined for you, then stop watching. I haven't really thought too much about how I'm going to draft this. I didn't do a rough draft at all or anything. I'm just going to freestyle it, so I could be, and most likely will be, jumping all over the place. So if you've seen my older video from back when The Last Jedi came out, I had to make a review just to get my feelings out there. It's still up there. I think it's like 45 or 55 minutes. But needless to say, I did not think much of that movie. And so going into this movie, first of all, I also I talked about how I wouldn't spend money to go to Episode 9 because I felt like Disney had messed me over so much as a fan. But I wound up seeing The Last Jedi because I bought the Star Wars video game. As a pre-sale, they gave you like a free movie ticket. So I still avoided spending the money, but I got to see the movie as well. I went to a 9:30 p.m. showing. It was on like the Sunday it came out, and it was not packed. So I'm not sure how well this movie's doing. Personally, I liked this movie. That being said, it's definitely the best of the three new ones, but it's sort of like how I would have, like I approach it like fan fiction. Like it's like somebody wrote a story that is just going to be overly pleasing to the fan base, which they really needed to do. But I still don't really acknowledge it as how Lucas would have had the story go. Personally, it's up to the individual. I prefer the books that he authorized back through the 90s up till like 2011 or something like that, with like Jason and Jaina Solo. But it's up to the fan. Personally, that's what I like. This is still fun to watch, but it just seemed a little maybe cheesy. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Contrived, I think, seems better. But let me launch into my reasons for why, and I'll also explain why I did like this movie. From what I remember, and it's already been a few days, like it starts off with, with the crawl, and you find out that the Emperor is still around. There's like some broadcast going on. I'd already heard rumors. I think everyone got that spoiled on some level that Palpatine was supposed to be in this movie. That's all right. They explained it enough, like with his clone technology, and I always kind of felt like when he fell in the Death Star that maybe his spirit or something was in that area. And even some of the books would say that like that area had like a dark essence to it, like any dark side Force user, that happens usually, like with Yoda's Dagobah swamp. Something bad had happened there in the past. Well, that's all right. And I did think it was forced that we have to bring back like the original baddie. But like us, after Last Jedi, they had to do something drastic, so I understand. I was really impressed with this opening scene where you see this, like Kylo Ren's going to find like this hidden location where the Emperor, his base has been this whole time. And he used this thing, I forget what they call it, some kind of compass. I really wish they had made it a holocron, which anyone like that's looked into like pretty much Star Wars outside of the movies before Disney, like if the Jedi or Sith had something on file, like it would be like a flash drive, but they called it like a holocron, and it was like this I don't remember what shape it was, but like it's basically kind of like a Rubik's cube, and only a Force user could like unlock it, and it had like the stored knowledge on it. That's to me a lot like what this compass was, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because the writer doesn't want to have to like owe credit to whoever created the concept of a holocron. They didn't call it that, but to me that's what it was. But it was like these I'm going to call them holocrons, are the only way you can find the location for where the Emperor has been hiding all these decades. Kylo Ren gets there, and the Emperor's there, and the Emperor, they did a really good job of making him scary looking. Like, it looked like he was out of one of these modern day horror movies. Like, I think The Nun would be an example, although I have not seen that movie. I've just seen, like, the makeup. I mean, I could envision like, all right, I was about 4 or 5 years old when I saw Return of the Jedi, and I remember the Rancor. That's the monster under Jabba's palace. That thing scared me. The second time I saw that movie in theater, I had to cover my eyes because I was scared to see it. I wasn't scared of the Emperor, but I could easily imagine the 5-year-old me thinking he was the scariest thing out ever. So that they did a good job with that. It made the movie feel more adult to me. But then there's like this big thing where the Emperor reveals his plan. He's got all these Star Destroyers, and they've been equipped with a special cannon that can blow up a planet. First of all, I like the concept with this because I'm tired of this. Hey, this is the Death Star, but it's bigger than the first two Death Stars. It's 5 times bigger, like this bigger is better concept. I like the idea that you could have a Star Destroyer with a big cannon that could do what a Death Star does, and not nearly like the smallest fraction of the cost that would have had to been involved in making it. That's good. The problem is they go overboard with how many of these Star Destroyers have been being made in this 30 or whatever years that the Emperor's been in hiding. It's like, oh God, it was ridiculous. I would love to know a count on it because literally every space on the screen was filled with a Star Destroyer, and it just was too much. Like I just said that they've been too overboard with the bigger is better idea. Well, they also, if it's not bigger, there's more is better. Like to me, I know it's all fantasy and everything, but it really messes with me when there's just an infinite amount. I mean, I get that it's CGI, so we can put as many on the screen as we want. To me, it looked like a fan-made desktop of just infinite Star Destroyers. Just, I mean, what I liked about Return of the Jedi was when they go and attack the Death Star, the Rebels, that is, there's a lot of ships out there, Star Destroyers, but it's not an infinite amount. Like, it's enough to make you think, all right, if you can just get rid of a few of these ships, you got a chance. There's just no hope with all these Star Destroyers, and that's not the kind of movie I like with these. I like when you're outmanned, but it's, I mean, you might be able to take a few with you. This was just ridiculous. And I don't feel like you need that many to make it that serious a threat. I feel like you could have had even 6, maybe 12 Star Destroyers. And if each one can blow up a planet, that's a big deal. Also, the other thing maybe I wasn't paying attention or listening well enough, but I don't understand why the Emperor felt the need to create this fleet of planet killers. Like, I mean, it even goes back to the original Death Star. What's the point in blowing up a planet if you want to rule the galaxy? I mean, it gets the other systems in line. That's the idea. But blowing up a planet is like a really big scorched earth. It's beyond scorched earth, really. Like, you just took out a planet of your resources. Like, why would you want to do that? I would think you'd want to come up with less intense ways. It also seemed a little weird to me that, like, the First Order was Palpatine's. So he developed that in secret, and then he had the Final Order, which were this fleet of Star Destroyers. I mean, he was already running things as the First Order. Was it really necessary that was the Final Order really that big a deal? Once again, maybe if he just had a few of these Star Destroyers and added them to his already existing basic fleet, that might have been cooler. But I mean, it wasn't the end of the world. It's just like, if they could just stop with this, what I consider like special effects steroids, and just make it more realistic or something. The same goes the other way with the Rebel fleet having like nothing. Like, give them a little more. They don't have to have a ton, but it just is all throughout this trilogy. They've just had no resources, and I just can't accept that they still win. In the original trilogy, they had enough ships to make it seem like, all right, they got a fighting chance. They can take a few of these ships with them. And they did. But yeah, that was a big issue for me in the movie. Anyway, moving on. After that scene where Kylo Ren's basically told that Rey has this big secret and she needs to be converted to the dark side, all this stuff. Then we go on to find Poe and Finn's team, which has Chewbacca and BB-8, I think's there. No, he's on a different, he's somewhere else. But anyway, it's basically Poe and Finn, and they're on the Falcon, and they're trying to get information from a spy. And they're talking to the spy's go-between. There's a spy in the First Order. We later find out it's Hux. And it's, Hux is the spy, but it's cool because it's not like he was betraying the First Order because he was a good guy. He was doing it just because he wanted to get Kylo Ren kicked out or have him lose. That was a little better than just having him be like every other Imperial agent that betrays the Empire. You'll see it throughout things, like it's in Rebels as well. The cartoon, which the majority of my figures I'm showcasing come from, and I highly recommend watching that. Same with the Clone Wars cartoons. Anyway, but I really liked this scene with Finn and Poe because I felt that there were not enough moments in this trilogy with Poe, Finn, and Rey where they're hanging out as like friends. We really don't get too many of those with Luke, Han, and Leia after the original movie, but there's enough moments that it really did feel like they cared about each other. I mean, I guess they do actually have a few moments throughout each movie, but yeah, with this new group, it really didn't feel like there was a reason they should be friends other than like they've been in a few scenes together. Finally, like they're working together routinely, and then after this scene, later in the movie, not too much later in the movie, Rey just joins the group and they go on missions. And it even more felt like this is a group that gets along and likes each other, even if they get in arguments like Poe and Rey don't necessarily see eye to eye. It still felt like this is what we needed to see. Like, and throughout all these moments, Finn finally gets to be like more of a hero and kick some butt and do things that matter. There were too many moments in the first two of these movies where he's just like the foil to make another person look better, whether it was Poe, Rose, or Rey. I was really pleased that Finn finally got to shine a bit. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, so finally after the whole little like talking to the spy, which led to like a chasing the Falcon and Finn's on the turrets, which I'm always happy to see those turrets used. Especially since the only other time we've really seen them used in this trilogy was in episode 7, which was more recycled episode 4. It's nice to see that they actually said, hey, we're going to use these turrets again. But then Poe and that group go to where the rebel base is, or the resistance, or whatever they're calling themselves. And what we get to see is Rey is meditating and practicing with the Force, and Leia's her Jedi master. And we learn throughout this that like Leia is Force trained, which we saw clearly she had Force abilities in The Last Jedi, but they didn't explain it. In this, they thankfully explained that she is a Jedi master, and she's been training Rey, which is all great. Finally, that's all I needed. I needed just to see that somebody was teaching Rey, and she didn't have this raw talent that could just let her do whatever she wanted versus someone that's been classically trained. That was just a little too much for me. I'm not upset at all with Leia being a Jedi Master. She's been Force trained in novels, and there's a lot that could have happened in the 30 or whatever years in between this and Last Jedi, or not Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, that I was never upset with her having Force powers. I did think in Last Jedi when she flies to the ship, I thought it was poorly done. And most importantly, how she gets into the ship without the airlock, shooting the people out that were there to get her. I mean, if you watch, it's even like there's a wall or bulkhead that gets in the camera's view so the audience doesn't see how exactly she gets through. It just seems shoddy to me. But that's old review. Anyway, I was happy with that, and with the Leia Master thing. And at this point, yeah, Rey and BB-8 link up with the rest of the group. They take C-3PO with them. I forget why they left, but I guess they found out information that told them they were continuing. I guess at one point before Luke decided to be a hermit, he was searching for this location that Darth Sidious is located in. And I guess big surprise, Luke quit, but he was on the trail. So they went to where he had last been. They get into some hijinks. They run into Lando, who's conveniently at this spot. And eventually, like, once again, I say that I liked seeing this group finally work as a group, kind of like that whole Scooby-Doo group feel to it, like they're getting along. But they get into this altercation. They get chased by more of these troops. And they fight them off, and they fall in like this kind of quicksand, which was really weird because, all right, the quicksand, they go through it, and they land underneath it in this like cavern or these caves and whatnot. But it kind of was weird to me because I don't understand where the sand went. Like, I don't know. I'm sure the explanation is it's some kind of material, maybe like a magnet type of thing that keeps the sand together. And then they slide through it and they fall underneath, but they can crawl around in these caves and stuff. They may have even called it like some kind of magnet thing. I don't know. But that actually, I just came up with that all on my own right now. So if that's what was going on, then that's all right. But otherwise, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Where'd the sand go? But they're underground and they have to find each other. And they run into this like snake-type monster thing. And this is classic Star Wars where they have to run into some kind of wildlife or monster. And it kind of reminded me once again of like that Rancor thing. Like the little me probably would have been scared of it. It is pretty intense looking. Of course, they find out that it's been injured by, like, there was this Jedi hunter that had been there and died before. It felt very Goonies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I liked because they were following, like, this. They were on this quest, and they had these clues and things like that. And they found the body. It felt to me like they found One-Eyed Willie from Goonies. And it has this Sith dagger, and they can't interpret it. Well, let me get to that in a minute. But, yeah, they had this monster gets in the way. And Rey and them noticed that it's actually wounded from, I guess, the bounty hunter had been stabbing it before it was killed, or Jedi hunter. So Rey calms it down, which is all great because they've demonstrated in past Star Wars movies that the Jedi can calm beasts down. Like Anakin did it in Attack of the Clones, and I think Obi-Wan did it in Revenge of the Sith. And that's great because that's not breaking new ground. That's tradition. They also, Rey heals the creature, which I don't know, some people might be like, oh, this is too much. No, some Jedi can do this. Like Obi-Wan was able to heal Luke in the original movie after the Tusken Raiders hit him, and he even did it in other scenes. In the old movies, though, it just looks like he lays his hands on the person and then they feel better. They didn't have the special effects like now, like they show Rey is doing it and the wounds you see with the CGI close up and stuff like that. So I like that. If you didn't know about that, I hope that maybe helps you if you thought it was too much. I don't think it's too much for her, like the whole Mary Sue thing. So then they get this Jedi Hunter's dagger that's in ancient Sith script or something, and C-3PO knows how to translate it, but he's not allowed to because of his programming. So then they've got to take him to some place where they can basically hack into his system and have him read it. I can't remember exactly how they get there, but I think this leads to them getting to another planet where we run into Poe has like an old flame. I forget her name, but she was to me like the coolest addition in this trilogy. She's very much like this character here, even has like similar color armor. She never takes her mask off. You can see her eyes through the visor at some points. But apparently it's Poe's old love interest, and he used to be a spice runner, which I kind of wish, I mean, it's a small gripe, but I wish that's what Han Solo was. So Poe really is just a Han Solo ripoff through and through. But that's a small thing. I do wish they could have come up with something a little different for him. I don't know what. Maybe he's some kind of like alcohol runner, not spice, but which is also a Dune reference if you've never seen or read Dune. Anyway, so with this woman and her group, I think it was, they find like this, they're able to hack into C-3PO's brain or CPU or whatever. Now, the thing is, they explain, and it's a real serious moment, that to do this, they're going to have to wipe his memory. And they talk about how R2 has like a hard drive on backup, but they don't know if they can trust R2 because of his, I guess he's not very responsible, which I don't quite pick up on. I don't see instances of that in the past. But anyway, it's this really serious moment. And to me, it comes off like, oh, shoot, essentially the C-3PO we know, since at least episode 4, is going to have his mind wiped and essentially die. And it'll be a new C-3PO. Later in the movie, they actually do find R2 has that hard drive, and he gets rebooted from that point. So C-3PO doesn't, quote, die. I thought that was a little disappointing, just because it really made it seem like, oh, this is it. Like, he's going to end. Like, this character that we know is going to end. And then, like, I don't know how many minutes into the movie or an hour or something later, it's like, oh, psych, that didn't really happen. So that takes away from the rewatching of it, like, the next time. They do this also with Chewbacca. There's a scene where, and it's really weird because, like, the group, maybe it was right around the same time, I think, or maybe when they were leaving the planet with the snake creature. Somehow Chewie gets captured by the First Order while I guess he was away from the group, and it's just really weird how it went down, because it was just like they were watching in the far distance, like, oh no, they got Chewie. Like, what was Chewie doing? I don't understand. It just seemed really convenient for the story. And they see Chewie get loaded up into a transport. Then Chewie goes up into this transport, like the troops fly off, and I mean some things happen in between it. Then Kylo Ren shows up, has a face-off with Rey. We've seen in the previews where he's in the TIE Fighter, and they get in a force struggle where they're trying to like he's trying to either grab the transport or let it go, or she's trying to bring it back down with the force. And I guess she gets so angry, she accidentally unleashes force lightning for the first time. Shoots it all the way up into that far distance, and the transport explodes. But then later we find out that was a different transport, and Chewie was alive and well on another transport. And that combined with the C-3PO, were almost like somebody had some daring ideas to kill the characters off, but then another person maybe was like, no, that's not going to go over well with the audience. Let's not do it. And then they got scared, so then they had a change up. To me, it was just too much of a psych moment. Like, oh, you thought he was dead. Psych, we fooled you. Two of them in there. It was just weird to me. But where was I in the review? Yeah, so they go and have C-3PO's memory erased so he can access the Sith information. And I guess they figure out that they have to go to this planet that is where the Death Star crashed, the remains of it when it exploded around Endor. And they go there. I probably skipped a lot, but I don't really remember anything else mattering. And it's kind of interesting because you see like this big chunk of the Death Star is landed in this ocean that's really turbulent. And it's an interesting concept. The group gets down there, and they use this dagger from the Jedi Hunter that acts as a compass. Like, once again, it felt more like Goonies or Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they align it so that they can see where they're supposed to go next. While there, they meet these people they're like Finn, where they used to be First Order stormtroopers, and then like him, they shook off their mind control or brainwashing or whatever it was, and now they fight the Empire. Whereas he was just by himself when he shook it off. They were like a company that shook it off when they had to shoot villagers and stuff, just like him, pretty much. They introduced a new character. I don't remember her name. She's a dark skin, and I would say African American, but she very well may be British or something, so that wouldn't be correct. Anyway, this group, and it sounds like she's probably getting a show on Disney Plus based on how her and Lando interacted and talked about what they were going to do next after when the movie was about to end. Anyway, what I liked about this is they finally explained what it was with Finn that made him shook off the First Order. I had never been exactly sure what happened. I thought maybe he could have been a Jedi with amnesia or something. But all they basically say is that these group of people are normal people that were kidnapped as children and, brainwashed by the First Order. And basically the Force is what came along and woke them up at those moments. I liked this because, up until now, it's always been the Jedi or the Sith working with the Force to bring balance. I like the concept that the Force can look after itself and does, and that maybe it doesn't always work through the Jedi or Sith. Like, if things are bad enough it will come to let some like average people that are less force sensitive and influence them to get what it needs. And that Finn is, you could, if you could almost say, in my opinion, that Finn, it could be the Force's champion. Like, he doesn't really have a strong metachlorian count or whatever, or connection with the Force, but the Force is more like it chose him, is how I look at it. And you get enough of those people, and you don't need Jedi or Sith. They're going to do it. Anyway, so yeah, you got this group. And then Rey and the group go into the remains of the Death Star. Still kind of like, man, for 30 years it's been on this planet, not to mention the crash involved. Like, it's hard to imagine what kind of shape it would be in or what the planet would have turned into from the impact, even 30 years later. But, you know, I'll roll with it. Like, a lot of things in this movie, I just had to, you know, just roll with it and have fun with it. They get in there, and Rey finds another one of these holocron things that can track the location of where the Sith are, or the Emperor. But then Kylo Ren gets there and they have a fight. Which, I mean, it kind of goes the way the usual fights go. And then ultimately, Rey winds up going to the island Luke's on, and Kylo is, I forget where he is at this point. I think he's still on the planet where the Death Star is. And we get to see a little bit of Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, obviously, and Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Solo appears to Ben as more of like a guilty conscience. And they talk and they rephrase the same things they said before Kylo killed him on episode 7. Except in this time... Oh, also, I think I skipped that. At some point, I think it was around here, Leia sacrificed herself, gave herself to the Force, and that hit Kylo really hard. Yeah, I did skip a lot. Alright, so Kylo feels his mother die, and that hits him so hard that he's about to kill Rey, but he holds off, drops his guard, and then Rey uses this as a moment to hit him with her lightsaber. And she impales him. And he's dying on the ground, and then she uses the Force healing powers she has to heal him. I thought this was really interesting for a few reasons. For one, I'm not quite sure I buy the healing could have worked on a lightsaber wound, because they're supposed to cauterize the wound, and that seals the wound. So I don't know if I accept that, but I mean, I'll roll with it, whatever. What really interests me is that I would say she struck out in anger. So personally, I kind of thought, like, you could say it's self-defense, which it was, but I kind of feel like this would have been her turning to the dark side. But maybe not. I mean, especially since, I mean, granted, you're moving quickly, but he had his guard down. And I kind of feel like this should have been like, uh-oh, she's just going to the dark side. Not to say she couldn't be redeemed, but then, yeah, after that, she heals him. They go separate ways. Somehow, I forget how exactly that played out. And this is where Kylo starts to remember who he used to be. He talks to his ghost dad, and he convinces him, like, instead of, like, you know, in the old episode 7 scene, he stabs his father by asking for help. He asks for help. And instead of stabbing the ghost, obviously, he throws the saber out into the water, showing that he has given up the dark side. Rey goes over to that island where Luke's ghost is, and he talks the things over with her, and he reveals that he has a lightsaber that used to be Princess Leia's, her sister's, and how she foresaw that someone like Rey would need it someday. So the plan is she's going to take it with her, as well as the Anakin lightsaber. Let me just say, this has kind of bothered me throughout this trilogy, is that they talk about the blue lightsaber that Luke was given from Obi-Wan as if it's Luke's. Like, sure, it was in his possession, but it's really not his, in my opinion. It's Anakin's. lightsaber. Luke's lightsaber is the green lightsaber he constructs around before Return of the Jedi. Like, that's a very big step in the Jedi becoming full-fledged, is that they create their own lightsaber. So it just bothers me that we act like this green lightsaber disappeared, and we only see it in a couple flashbacks, like literally two, throughout the whole trilogy. But otherwise, it's like they treat the Anakin blue lightsaber as Luke's, which, I mean, maybe his essence would be connected to it, but I feel like if anything, Anakin's would be more so. So, he gives her this lightsaber, and she winds up, I think, did she sabotage her ways of getting off the island, maybe? Like, she blew up whatever ship she brought. But he brings up the X-Wing that's underwater for her, which, personally, for me, this is a really cool moment, because, I mean, it's like, he's finally doing what Yoda did for him back in Empire Strikes Back by bringing up the the X-Wing out of the water, which is something, you know, he couldn't do. And personally, I got a soft spot for that X-Wing, so it was really nice seeing that thing come up. Could it fly in space after being submerged for how many decades underwater? I don't know, but we'll roll with it. I mean, it was meant to fly in space. Maybe water's not that big a deal. So she flies off in that with the location on how to get to the Sith. And at this point, the Rebels have decided they're going to have Lando and Chewie flying the Millennium Falcon, going from system to system, rallying people for how this is the final stand against the First Order, and this is what they're going to do. If enough people rally, maybe they have a chance. So basically, Lando is the Paul Revere of this movie, and he's going around telling them the redcoats are coming and all this. I still do not know if I can accept that all these ships, they do show up, of course, would have shown up when the whole idea is they've been scared this whole time. So all it takes is the Millennium Falcon flying around, calling for them, and they're like, all right, this is the time I'll finally have some courage. Maybe you could accept it. It's because it's the Millennium Falcon, and that's like this like famous ship of freedom or whatever. I don't know, symbol. But that's the plan. Like, Lando's flying around getting help while they're taking the fight to the First Order, and Rey is going to confront Darth Sidious. So Rey does get down in there and finds Darth Sidious. And by this point, she's learned she's a Palpatine. This is really weird to me. Like she's the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. But it's like, for her, like, they briefly show her, like, she learns her parents. One of them is the son or daughter, I don't think they explain which, of the Emperor. And it's just based on the age. They're fairly young-looking people, and it would have taken place shortly after Return of the Jedi, I would have assumed. Something like that. Maybe 10 years after Return of the Jedi. So, how old was her mom or dad when it was conceived by Darth Sidious? It was like, are we talking like